Test. This is Laura Vogelbaugh. I'm interviewing Shirley Polk, January 21st, 1986.
I didn't know where you were born and raised. Okay, I was born and raised in Schulenburg, Texas, and that's about 1.5 drive west of here. And that's where I grew up and was born.
How long have you lived in Katy?
I lived here right around 11 years.
Okay, can you describe the appearance of Katy when you first moved here?
Yeah, when we first moved here, well, I know in my neighborhood, there were Pine Forest wasn't here, and Hunter's Terrace wasn't here. We were about the only subdivision in the area. And in fact, there were no subdivisions really. I think Katyland was the only one. And since then, they've added this Village Green, and they've really added a lot of businesses too. None of the shopping centers were here. There's little strip malls. I guess probably the only thing that was here when we moved here was BG's Chicken. That area right in there. It was called BG's Chicken. And it's something else, like Country Cupboard or something now. And the rice dryers, that was...
Was Katy High School here?
Katy High School was here, but it was still fairly small. Because they hadn't added on, and I think they didn't have the new parts, the new girls' gym and things like that. So it was still the old high school.
Why did you move to Katy?
Well, we moved here mainly because we wanted to get away from the traffic and the congestion of the city. We were tired of living right next door to our neighbors, having one on top of the other. We look at our window, you could just practically shake hands with the neighbor next door. And mainly our children were getting the age where they needed some space. And since my husband and I both had grown up in the small town and in the country, we wanted that for our children. And then we'd also heard the school district was real good, so we moved here for the schools too.
And when you first came to Katy, what was the first Catholic church you came to?
Okay, it was St. Bartholomew.
It was still
It was already built. Now, it was only like a fourth of the size it is now. The classrooms weren't there. The interior of the church was like, I guess, about less than half of the kneeling space that's there now. And it was very little.
There weren't very many members.
There were like 200, I think about 200 families when we moved here, but they had registered.
Well, do you know where anybody else went to church before St. Bartholomew? Is there a Catholic church anywhere around?
The Brookshire has one, and I think a few of the people went to Houston. Probably the closest was St. Cecilia's then, and St. Jerome. That would be the closest I could think of.
Has much changed in the church since you first came back?
St. Bartholomew? Yes, a lot has changed.
Really?
Yes. Well, I guess mainly the biggest change was that when we first moved here, the laity, or the general Catholic, was not allowed up at the altar, and they had, I think, maybe one man and one woman giving communion, and that was about it. But now, the laity are involved in a lot more things. We started the parish council, and then have that, and the education has changed and grown, and on the size has really more than doubled, I know.
They didn't have CC classes?
They had them, but they were all on Sunday morning. And I'm trying to think. They weren't, any other time wasn't offered. I think everything was on Sunday morning.
There's church tonight at me. At your church Tuesday?
I'm sorry,
Is there church Tuesday night at your church for Wednesday?
Wednesday evening, and I think they still have some classes Wednesday night. I think it's near the junior high. But everything else has been moved back to Sunday.
Okay, and what church were you baptized in?
I was baptized, I believe, at St. Rose in Schulenburg.
So you've attended St. Bartholomew for 11 years? Well, you didn't know that. When did the idea of having a Catholic church first arise?
and as it started growing,
Yeah.
that they decided it was time. I think on the history here it said that there were 45 families when they started, and they met at Katy Elementary School at the VFW Hall.
Well, do you know the attitude that was taken to Catholic Church in here against the Protestants?
Well, I heard that at first the attitude wasn't too good.
Yeah.
But then I've also heard that if it weren't for some of the Protestant churches here, the Catholic Church wouldn't be here, that they all pitched in and helped them and let them, I guess, use some of their facilities from time to time, and that the attitude kind of changed as it started to grow.
Okay, and how do you feel about Epiphany of Our Lord? That's the new edition of it.
How do I feel about Epiphany of Our Lord? Well, actually, I think it was needed, because I was on the parish council when the decision was made to split and form a new church, and at the time it was that Katy was faced with the option, because we were so crowded.
Yeah.
We were faced with the option of building a church here on our own, and then still having to split at some time in the future, and be faced with carrying on the debt for who knows how long, that they decided if it was going to have to come anyway, then it may as well be done now. And so I felt like it relieved a lot of the pressure of overcrowding. But at the same time, I feel kind of sad because we lost so many good people that were involved in it. Because there were a lot of people that went over there that were real active and did a lot of good in the church too. So in that respect, I miss all the people that went there. But on the other hand, I can see where it was needed, and I don't really feel like it affected me one way or the other.
Yeah.
Other than missing all those people.
Was there anything else?
You ran out of questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to see a lot more changes as we, I think that eventually we are going to have to build a new church here, and there are a lot of the people that really want a new church. And some people have been disappointed that we haven't built a church. And I myself, in a way, feel a little disappointed that Epiphany's got a brand new church.
Yeah.
And everything's so nice, and and we're still sitting in the original church.
I've never been in such
Haven't you? It's a small church, really, for accommodating as many people as it does.
And that's 3 masses on Sunday.
3 masses on Sunday, and then I guess one of the biggest changes I've seen is that they added the Spanish Mass. Enough Spanish people have moved out into the area that couldn't speak English, so they started having the Spanish Masses for them. And then I guess the other thing that I saw was that a lot of the people, we had a lot of elderly people, and they organized a group for them.
Oh, really?
And they called themselves, they were given a chance to vote on their own name. And it was one of my projects on the parish council that I had to work with them to help them get it started. And they called themselves the MAG group, I think, Mature Adult Group. I thought that was kind of a cute name. They didn't want to call themselves senior citizens, so they mature adults. And well, now they've even got CC classes for Spanish-speaking students who can't speak English. And, I guess they've got the RCIA, which is for the new people that want to become Catholic. And I think it's come a long way. Anything else?
I don't know anything else.
Oh, I remember when I first started teaching out here, we didn't have the classrooms. Well, they had 2 classrooms inside the church there where the priest is using the area now where he comes out of, keeps all his vestments and things. And then on the other side where the hospitality room is, that was all classrooms. And I believe even where the confessional was, that was classroom. And then they closed that off and made the confessional there. And then, but what we used to teach in were what they call tea shacks. And that was all we had for classrooms were the tea shacks, the portable buildings. And it was awful to try and teach in one of those.
Did everybody go to the same room?
Well, no, they had several of them. So like we had them divided up according to grades.
Yeah.
I think like I taught a 4th grade class the first time I came here, and we had 2 4th grade classes, and they were side by side in one of the tea shacks, and then they had several. And then they started growing, and they didn't know what to do with all the people and all the children. So they decided it was time to build some permanent classrooms, and they sold the old tea shacks to Brookshire, I think. And then from what we have today. And I don't know how many times, I know they've enlarged, they've come backwards at least twice, and added more pews. And I just don't think there's any more room for them other than to build a new church. It doesn't enlarge anymore.
Where would they put the new church today?
Somewhere back over there behind the, where the trees are and the baseball bat wall. Yeah. Somewhere back in there, I heard. But if they do, that's probably where it would be, most likely where it would be. Because the lane goes, I think, all the way back. Get some ideas here. Well, the rector was here when we came, like I said before.
Just the father was here by himself.
Oh, I guess another thing that we have now that we didn't have, and when you were talking about the changes, was that the laity also has a little more input into what happens in the diocese, because they have what they call a pastoral diocesan council, and they take members from parish councils in the different churches around the city, and they get together and they discuss what they feel the pressing needs in the diocese are, and how they can go about solving some of the problems, and they meet with the priests in the parish. And it's kind of interesting because I was a member for a while, and it's really interesting because you get to go and you get to hear what all the other parishes are doing, and if they're experiencing the same problems you are, and you can get some real interesting insights to listening how they solve their problems. And at the same time, it gives the bishop, because he's there too, and it gives him an idea of what's going on and what some of the problems that people are having. And I think that's kind of interesting, and it wasn't done when I was growing up. Everything was decided by nuns and priests.
Yeah.
And now they're letting the lay people have a little more say in some of the things.
How long were you on the council?
Well, he was on for 2 years as an elected, and then also worked for a while as a director of religious education there for about 2 or 3 years, and so I was on it in that capacity also. So I guess a total of 5 years probably, somewhere in that area. It's kind of hard to think of questions when you're trying to...
You're trying to think of something. Well, my report... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say also one other thing I really noticed, if you're really talking about how the church has changed, is that when I was growing up, we got a lot of Bible history. We were told about stories in the Bible, but we were never actually taught how to read the Bible or to study it. And I think that's one of the the emphasis that has come out was the more scripture study and scripture related courses and things for the people, for Catholics in particular. I think also the our CCE teachers are more educated than they used to be. They require them to go to courses, and most of them, in fact, I'd say probably at St. Bartholomew's, the majority of them are probably professional teachers in their daily life as well, teaching elementary school and high school. And that's probably true at Epiphany and other places too. So I see that there's more education required there. And it used to be that only priests and sisters were allowed to teach religion.
Yeah. I know it's a Catholic school. I had to go to church with the school and and stuff.
And I guess another thing would be the emphasis on Mary is not as strong as it used to be.
Yeah.
There's more emphasis on Jesus as a person. And that, using him as an example. Also, on the sacraments have really changed. And there's more of a love relationship between God and people. And it used to be more fear and that sort of thing. So I guess, quite a bit has changed, really.
Well, our cross, I don't know, is the cross in your church, does it have Jesus hanging on the cross? Because the one we got in our church does. No one we did. Yeah, we didn't have that. I thought usually most Catholic churches had that. I guess I don't know.
Maybe some of the newer churches aren't. I know that there's a lot of study been done on just church structure too, and how, to make it more meaningful just for the church structure for people. And liturgy it's easier to understand the Mass than it used to be, because it's in English for one thing.
Did you ever listen to it in Latin?
I used to. Well, when I was growing up, I went to a Catholic school. In fact, I went to Catholic elementary school, junior high, high school, and college.
Oh, gosh.
And up until I graduated from college, Mass was still said in Latin. In fact, when I got married, Mass was said in Latin.
Oh, gosh.
Well, our ceremony itself was, that was in English, but the Mass itself, I believe, was in Latin.
I can't imagine that.
I know. You go, and it was like you couldn't really relate, because you couldn't hear. Now, I feel like I had real progressive nuns when I was growing up, because they taught us the Mass in English. And when, like in junior high, when we were in the 8th grade, they would teach us to say the Mass in English, because they felt like one day the Mass would be changed and said in English.
That was good.
And so a lot of the things we were prepared for, even though they didn't come about maybe 10 or 15 years after we graduated.
Well, I make such a good interview.
Get you ready. When we first came here, Wednesday was church night. My children never got homework on Wednesdays, because that was the night they went to church, and all the other children went to church here also at all the other churches, and so the teachers never gave homework on Wednesday night, because they knew that was church night. And it was kind of nice, because they had one night that they knew they could go to church and devote to church without worrying about their homework. But since then, that has changed.
Yeah, they never give us a break.
Let's see. You want me to say there were 2 Masses?
Yeah.
Okay, there were 2 Masses on Sunday. We had a 7:30 in the morning and 11 o'clock, and then one on Saturday evening. We had two pastoral assistants, or what we call deacons, and they're still both here. They're still both deacons. And Father Domack was the pastor when we came. There had only been one pastor before him, and he was here only a short while. Father Domack was here something like 12 years, I believe. And in fact, I don't think the church was even finished when he took over. We used to have a men's club and a ladies club, and we don't have either one of those anymore.
What did they do?
Well, the ladies club kind of just met once a month, and they would do like crafts or take care of plan little dinners or fashion shows. It was just more or less a social group.
Yeah.
Sometimes if someone died, they would take over food, arrangements for food and that sort of thing. The men's club, I think, again, was more or less strictly social. They would just get together for games and parties and do, some spiritual things. But I think for the most part, they were just kind of a community building.
Why don't they have any?
I don't know. I guess then when we started getting all the other things, people were so involved in them that they started almost specializing. You had a group for liturgy, a group for education, you had a group for the sacraments, and there's another group that prepares the altar boys, and it just sort of
Yeah.
I guess just wasn't a need for it anymore.
Yeah, I'm getting my sound effects.
Strange house.
When did y'all first have a choir?
Well, it seemed like there was a choir here when we came, but they didn't sing at all the masses. I know there was a young, I want to say it wasn't children's choir, but a teen choir that one of our parishioners, Vicki Waller, had started. She was real good with music and with teenagers, and she would meet with them and they would prepare the music. And I understand they used to even sing locally at some of the banks and different areas. That's my fire alarm. The batteries are wearing out, I think. None of my children were baptized here. They were all baptized in churches in Houston. So,
Was St. Bartholomew's here then? When they were baptized there?
yeah, I think so. St. Bartholomew's was started in '66, and my first daughter was born in '69, so it would have been here. 67. My son was born in '69. So it would have been here then already. I had just started the year before she was born.
Is that all?
That's all I can think of, unless you have any specific questions.
No, I gave all my questions.